We've heard 1,000 times that reality surpasses fiction. We are often reminded that many things that started as dreams or anticipated in a movie ended up coming true for better or worse. The moral is that the impact that events have on humanity is always much deeper than what is imagined in a film. We also saw dozens of movies in which the protagonists are involved in horrible events, which can even include a real bloodbath. Movies that showed us that a human being can turn into a monster in the blink of an eye. Because of a bad decision, a bad day, or simply because madness is always there, latent. And it turns out that in this too, reality surpasses fiction. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Today I want to challenge you. Next I want to show you the faces of some actors that you will surely remember for their role in some fictions. Once you recognize them, I'm going to ask you if you know what happened to them after they experienced their peak of fame. I assure you that in most cases you will be astounded. Welcome to the dark top of actors who became murderers. If you like this theme and want us to talk more about Hollywood cases, celebrities and so on, write the word scandal below in the comments. If there are more than 200 people writing scandal, we are going to prepare another similar top. As we always say, in these tops there is a bonus track at the end of everything. That has to do with an actor that you probably know, but we are not going to say the name. Let it be a surprise for you. Now let's get started. Position number: death at the wheel. To start this top, we decided to make a sort of compilation, given the alarming number of similar cases. I could say that we are going to start this ranking at full speed, but precisely about how dangerous high speeds are, because I want to talk to you. The rule is simple and is known by all. A car in the wrong hands becomes a lethal weapon, and this was dramatically proven by several actors and actresses. Do you remember Matthew Broderick, for instance? Surely you've seen him in a romantic comedy, a light crime film, or some drama. He gave a face to the long-delayed live-action Inspector Gadget adaptation. If you watch movies in their original language, you'll recognize his very distinct voice. Not to mention, Matthew is none other than the one who voiced adult Simba in the mega hit The Lion King from 1994. After proving that his talent was not limited to what happened in front of the cameras, but extended throughout the entire dubbing universe. The actor participated in other productions such as B-Movie. He also earned several extra headlines for having been married since 1997 to Sarah Jessica Parker. But long before all this success, Matthew's career hung by a thread and was about to have a very abrupt end. It all happened in August 1987. By this time, Broderick had already starred in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, a teen movie that would become the 10th highest grossing film of 1986. There, the actor played a charismatic slacker and even shared the screen with Jennifer Grey, who would later win a Golden Globe for her performance in Dirty Dancing alongside Patrick Swayze. According to what would later be revealed in the woman's memoirs, she and Broderick had a romance that developed on set, between takes. Apart from the fact that there was chemistry between them, they were very good companions, which is why they went together, the night when everything went irretrievably wrong. Matthew and Jennifer had rented a car near Tempo, Northern Ireland. The plan was to have a journey through the streets and roads of that part of the map. And everything was going according to plan. Until at some point in the journey, Broderick crossed into the opposite lane and collided head-on with another vehicle. One driven by a 63-year-old woman named Margaret Doherty. Her 28-year-old daughter Anna was with her. Both women died instantly. Matthew suffered a leg and rib fracture, along with a concussion and a collapsed lung. The press even speculated about his death. Grace suffered a vertical whiplash that resulted in several painful surgeries. Her leg mobility was impaired and at risk. When the actor recovered from his critical condition, he faced a 5-year prison sentence. However, he was found guilty of the lesser charge of reckless driving and received a fine of £100. The victim's family considered the verdict not only to be very lenient, but also disrespectful. In 2012, the family spoke out again when the actress appeared in a Honda ad. Martin Doherty, also a son of the late Margaret, expressed that Broderick was not the best choice of driver, knowing his past. This revived for a while what had happened more than 20 years ago. Over time, this matter was left in the shadows, so today we bring it back to light, along with other similar cases. Let's start with Amy Locaine, who in the early 90s shone as Johnny Depp's partner in the movie Cry Baby. Although you are very likely to remember her better for her role in the first season of Melrose Place, or for her appearance in the controversial The Secretary. Many don't know that in 2010, Amy was sentenced to 3 years in prison after being found guilty of homicide for the death of Helen Seaman. Helen was a passenger in a car that crashed due to a violent maneuver made by the actress. Amy was drunk at the time of the incident, which outraged everyone even more. Let's continue now with this actor born on May 23, 1980. This is about Lane Garrison, although many surely do not hesitate to recognize him as David Tweener Apolskis. Yes, Lane is known for his role in Prison Break, where he played a convict serving time for his knack for theft. Although Lane didn't steal in his personal life, he still ended up in prison. In 2006, when he hit and killed a 17-year-old while driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Again, the sentence was ridiculously low, just 40 months behind bars. Even less was the sentence this girl served. You may have noticed Amber Heard's presence in Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Equally true is that if you like slashers and millennial cinema, remember her appearances in Urban Legend and Scream 2. Rebecca used to be predicted a career abundant in jobs, which did not happen, mainly due to the terrible event that had her as the protagonist in 2000. That year, the actress was driving while looking at her cell phone when she ran over and killed a 9-year-old boy who was returning from school. She was sentenced to 3 years of probation, a 1-year suspension of her driving license, 750 hours of community service, and a fine of $2,800. This snapshot of these accidents is a good excuse to remember the importance of respecting traffic rules and the prohibitions that exist regarding who is going to take the wheel. As we could see, the mentioned actors were lucky when facing a judge who could not avoid the full weight of the law. He is the one who occupies the number 3 position number May 19 of 2014. A call came into 911 and a man calmly stated that he had gunned down his wife. He described that he even did it in front of his 2 children before turning himself in. He had also texted his mother-in-law, whom he had informed of everything, to go to the crime scene to pick up the little ones. The subject had acted with total coldness, without panicking at any moment. On the call, they delayed him with questions. Within minutes, some agents arrived at his home. With the same calculating attitude, the man came out to the door with his hands up, ready for them to lock up his wife. The victim's name was April. He introduced himself as Michael Jace, and perhaps his face sounds familiar. Michael Jace has had small roles in movies like Planet of the Apes or Boogie Nights. He also led the Black Panthers in Forrest Gump. While Michael confessed to the murder of his wife, the murder weapon was never found. For some reason, the man always seemed contradictory about this. It is assumed that the couple had argued on the day of the crime, according to the neighbors. After the arrest, Michael was imposed a bail of $1 million. Then, after an intense trial, he was sentenced to 40 years in prison without the right to parole. The prosecutor said that the actor was upset because his wife wanted to divorce and he believed she was having an affair. Michael expressed feeling remorseful, apologized, and said that he did everything in a fit of anger, that his intention was not to kill April but to hurt her. The victim's mother said she did not accept the apologies and pointed out that the day of her daughter's death, she also died. Today, Michael's life takes place far from the film sets and his dreams of becoming a recognized star are dust. The person with the second highest position had a comparable experience. A young man who not only committed a truly atrocious crime, but also had plans to carry out a massacre. Number position: Ryan Grantham. At less than 15 years old, actor Ryan Grantham played a dead child who was revived by a miraculous carpenter in the movie The Carpenter Miracles. Prior to this actor from Canada had made an appearance in Supernatural. He would later have a supporting role in Riverdale, more precisely in 2019. However, just a year later, his meteoric rise would end in the worst possible way, on March 31st, 2020. The young man approached his mother from behind while she was playing the piano. Without her noticing, he raised the gun and shot her, killing her. After this, He recorded himself next to the corpse and talked about what he had done in front of a camera. He claimed that he had committed the crime to spare his mother from suffering. What did he mean by that? He was about to do, according to him, something really bad, and he didn't want her to be ashamed. After stopping the video, some versions say that the young man put his mother's body in the trunk of his car. Others say that Graham covered his mother's body with a sheet, lit some candles around it, and hung a rosary on the piano. One way or another, the boy got into the family vehicle and drove with a clear destination. He wanted to end the life of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In a few months, Trudeau had gone from being considered a hope for politics to being at the center of scandalous controversies. Ryan saw him as an enemy and was willing to get him out of the way. For such purpose, he was armed with 3 pistols, ammunition, Molotov cocktails, camping gear, and a map with directions. However, at some point during the trip, he decided it would be better to stage a shooting at the Lions Gate Bridge in Vancouver or at Simon Fraser University, where he was studying. After a few kilometers, he changed his plans again. Exhausted and confused, he parked at the nearest police station and confessed everything. After a long trial, he was sentenced by the Supreme Court of British Columbia to life imprisonment for the murder of his mother. In the hearings, it was revealed that Ryan was an experienced shooter and that he had a gun under his ownership. It was also reported that days prior to the homicide, he had been practicing how he would carry out the massacre. Psychiatric reports on the young man's mental state agreed that Graham was going through an intense period of clinical depression, to which a possible disorder resulting from marijuana use had been added. Do you think the boy somehow gave himself over to a kind of psychosis? Something similar happened to the person who holds the number 1 spot. Number 1. Lewis. Johnny Lewis was born in 1983 into a Scientology family, and from a very young age, he knew that acting was his thing. Look at his picture and tell me, where do you remember him from? Have you guessed yet? I'll give you a few more seconds, and by the way, I'll tell you that at 17, this young man appeared in Boston Public and then in Malcolm in the Middle. It wouldn't be long until his television roles kept piling up, including appearances on the controversial Drake and Josh from Nickelodeon, teen sitcom created by Dan Schneider, accused of pedophilia on multiple occasions. If you want to know more about this peculiar and perverse character, you can check out all the reports we did on this channel. In 2007, Lewis's appearance in Aliens vs Predator Requiem put him in the eye of some producers. And for 2008, he would get the role that would catapult him. He would soon become Kip Halfsack Epps in the first 2 seasons of Sons of Anarchy. Previously, he dated Katy Perry, who allegedly left him due to his troubling behavior. It's believed the artist may have dedicated several hits to him. Unable to cope with certain addictions, Johnny was arrested 3 times, between 2011 and 2012 for public violence and for trespassing on private property. His probation officer expressed concern for the actor's mental health and announced that the young man needed extra help, which never came. His relatives stated at that time that Johnny's erratic behaviors had started after a terrible motorcycle accident in which he had hit his head hard. As predicted, the tragic conclusion occurred on September 26, 2012. Luis, who was 28 years old at that time, was found dead on a sidewalk. Subsequent investigations showed that he had jumped from the balcony of a house where an 81-year-old woman lived with her cat. The police investigations were conclusive. Both the woman and the animal had been murdered by Johnny before he decided to take his own life. Louis is still remembered, and there are many who wonder how things would have been for him if he could have put his vices aside. The bonus track occupant could do something, bringing our story full circle. Bonus track mark. The next actor needs no introduction. Seeing him is to remember many of the most watched movies of recent times. You've probably seen his work in films like Planet of the Apes by Tim Burton, the adaptation of Max Payne in blockbusters like Transformers, or in irreverent comedies like Ted. The list of projects he's been in is extensive, and it would be impossible not to forget to mention one. This led him to receive numerous awards and even get his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on July 29, 2010. But before he was that face that was at the center of hundreds of posters, Mark's face was in the police offices under the wanted sign. Yes, this actor, who nowadays often smiles on the red carpets, spent years hiding from any kind of recognition due to his huge and terrible criminal record. And it's not just that he ended up in jail, but he was even charged with attempted murder. Mark Wahlberg was born on June 5, 1971 in a large family in Boston, where he was the youngest of 9 siblings. His father was a Korean War veteran and his mother a nursing assistant. The clan did not have many economic resources, and the fact that there were so many did not help at all. Suddenly, the needs became evident, and the youngest ones began to associate with the less friendly side of the neighborhood they lived in. Gradually, a very young Mark began to forge ties with street violence and drug trafficking. Determined to climb in the underworld of Lampa, which seemed to offer him greater rewards than the academic world, Mark professionalized in theft and soon made a reputation for himself. He was good at committing petty crimes and acts of vandalism, so the heavyweights didn't want to miss the opportunity to recruit him for their gangs. Mark transitioned from a thug to a trafficker. However, he broke the code that is supposed to govern all drug dealers. He became addicted to what he was selling, being surrounded by potential problems. The adrenaline of his routine and an increasingly problematic cocaine use surrounded his days, until he started waking up full of bruises and blood without remembering what he had done the night before. He was only aware that at a certain point anger took over him and he could no longer control it. As expected, this conduct caused him legal troubles. So in 1986 he faced one of the many lawsuits that would become habitual from then on. At that time, he was judged for chasing 2 African American boys while hurling racist insults. In front of the judge, Mark said that those were insults chosen at random, that he felt nothing akin to racial hatred. However, the incidents where he assaulted people of color or from other ethnicities just for being so piled up. At the same time, evidence piled up showing that Mark believed he was in a position of superiority for being white. His assaults began to cause more and more damage. The people he attacked were increasingly hurt. It was clear that if Mark kept going that way, he would kill someone. When justice warned him that it would no longer have mercy on him, Mark committed to not assaulting, threatening, intimidating, or harassing people. Given his origins, Spoiler was not going to keep his promise. Months later, Wilbert attacked a man of Vietnamese origin with a stick. He did it wordlessly, based solely on the other's appearance, who then fell unconscious. When another Vietnamese tried to intervene, Mark hit him hard, also knocking him down. He then struck both victims while they were down. Having unleashed his inner beast, he ran down the street looking for other people with similar characteristics. Hoa Trinh had the misfortune of crossing his path, but then sirens began to sound nearby. Knowing they were in trouble, Mark huddled behind the man and asked him to cover him. When the patrol car passed by without recognizing him, the future actor straightened up and hit Hoa hard. The victims had to be rushed to a hospital. There were numerous witnesses to the attack, and this time Mark couldn't play ignorant. The patrol car, which had passed by him seconds ago, turned around and the officers didn't let him escape. Mark, far from showing any kind of remorse, was proud to hurt those he considered less worthy. That resulted in 45 days in juvenile detention. After being released, the young man avoided bad influences and looked for new ways to earn a living. At that time, art presented itself as a possible salvation for a very short period of time. He tried it with music and was part of the legendary New Kids on the Block, but he left before success hit them. On the other hand, his brother succeeded there. In fact, it was that brother who later recommended Mark when dining with producers. One thing led to another, and Mark made a small name for himself as a rapper. Calvin Klein chose him as a model for their ads due to his on-stage attitude. What about the least expected day? The youngest of the Wilberts was called to a casting. The rest is history. In 1993, Wilbert gave a press conference in which he admitted to committing racial crimes. After the Committee Against Anti-Asian Violence and the Gay and Lesbian Advocates and Defenders organization complained about a racist person being the image of a top-tier brand. Mark remained in the news afterwards for his homophobic remarks. Despite this, his charisma overshadowed his flaws, and people gradually stopped mentioning his dark side. The actor is acclaimed today. Those who have closely followed his career from the beginning know that it's a miracle things didn't get out of hand during his worst years. Something that would have made him end up like any of the other actors who shaped this top. In fact, there's a kind of Hollywood urban legend that says Mark did commit a crime before becoming famous, but thanks to the influence his brother had. At one point, the fact would have been swept under that rug that the powerful used to hide their corpses. As mentioned, numerous celebrities were omitted from this ranking, so if you want us to make a second part, write the word scandal below in the comments. If more than 200 people write scandal, we're going to make a second part. And I also invite you to write names of actors that you know who have committed a crime so we can include in our next part of this top. Lastly, it's always good to remember that those people we idolize are also human beings, prone to making mistakes, having accidents, losing control of their lives, and often succumbing to their lowest instincts. With nothing more to say, I invite you to subscribe, leave a like, and check out the other videos I recommend. And I'm off. My name is Magnus Mephisto, see you next time, goodbye.